Hey there, Groovesters, Groove Stars, Ridgely here, and I'm super excited to have with me a dear, dear friend. We go way back, way back. Man, before I even get started here, way back to when our kids were like only about knee high, and now they're graduated and doing their own thing. Entrepreneur par excellence since the very beginning. Super interesting individual. Very, very happy to have the founder of the Louisiana Accident and Injury Care Facility, Dr. Dallas Humble. Dallas, brother, you're looking good, man. I like this new look with less hair.
Yeah, well, thank you. That wasn't planned. It just kind of happened through life. But at least I ended up with a round type of head, so that it wasn't. I didn't have a cone head or something when I had to shave all my hair off. So.
My grandparents, all of them have no hair. They eventually ended up bald. And I said, watch my hair just go marching north. And I know my time is coming at some point. But now that I see you, you look so distinguished. I'm thinking maybe I might go there sooner.
Well, it took a long time in the mirror to get used to that, though. Your brain, I would look and I thought, God, is that you? It just took me a while. And my wife always liked it. It took me a long time, but I'm good with it now. And I get ready really fast, so I don't have to worry about all that. You just jump in the shower and out and you're going. So.
Yep, I hear you. Well, Dallas, take us back. I mean, you've had an amazing career, built a number of different companies and enterprises. Started out though at pursuing a particular field. So take us back a little bit to your history. How did you get on this entrepreneurial career? What was the thing that made you pivot and go in that direction? Give us a little background.
Well, when I go back to the very beginning, originally, obviously, I went to school, came out to be a chiropractic physician, which I was. And then we developed a number of clinics, ended up going to, I think, 22 offices in about 5 different states. Made a lot of mistakes. I didn't have a lot of blueprints to follow. We just kind of marched down the road to learn from mistakes. I did that for a long time. Then I started consulting in the profession. And eventually I sold the clinics out and I went full time into the consulting role. And during the time that I was in the clinician role, I ran into a lot of people that influenced me. The first real influencer was Zig Ziglar. In Dallas, Texas. I went to one of his programs, and at that time, that's when the programs were a little smaller. And I got to know him. I'm not going to say on a real personal basis, but I got to talk to him, and he just influenced me a lot with his words of wisdom and inspiration in that. And then I was out in Scottsdale, Arizona, at a small program in a hotel, and they kept talking about how I needed to go listen to this guy named Tony Robbins. And so we didn't have anything really going on that day, so I went in. We had about 16 of us in the room, and he spent the whole day, and I had no idea who he was. I look back, I should have went to lunch with him, should have got to know him better. I didn't do any of that, but I was influenced by that. So all of that influenced me to get into not only the consulting world, but obviously in the speaking and the motivation and one thing after the other. And that's kind of where you and I connected. And I did that for a long period of time. When I say, it did okay, that was fine. I never really took off at it. I did it a lot in my profession, really is where I spoke, and I felt like I had the most to offer because I could help them in what it is that they did. So I did that for a number of years, but through all of that, Ridge, I went through a lot of ups and downs and valleys, which we all do. And I hear people all the time talking about what life has done to them, how unfair it's been, how someone else has had all the breaks, all that type of thing. And my experience with that is just not true. None of that's true. We're all in this world. Yes, some of us start out with maybe a little bit more of a opportunity or whatever the case may be, but regardless of the opportunities, we still have things thrown at us. I had a wonderful childhood. Wouldn't trade my childhood for anything. I had some of the most wonderful parents that a person could ever ask for. So that's a great opportunity, right? But that didn't keep me from having valleys and burnouts along the way. And those existed all the way through my career. I mean, literally big ones. I lost everything I had several different times, which is a devastating thing. It's one thing not to have anything and lose a little bit, but it's another thing to really get yourself up a ladder and just lose it. And I've had that happen to me on multiple occasions. Had to file bankruptcy one time in my life. One Friday afternoon, left my house, got a phone call, went back, and my house was completely burned down and everything I had in it. And I called my children. I literally had them out that night, and I was raising them, which is another valley I'll tell you in just a minute. Even buying toothbrushes, we had nothing. When I say everything we had was in the house, I mean everything. And that's a real experience. A house fire, I've heard a lot of people talk about it, but if you ever go through something like that, and I don't wish that on anyone, you have to go through several seasons to get through it, because the winter comes, you look for the winter coat. The summer comes and you're looking for the things that you used or wear in the summer and the fall. And you have to go through several seasons to let it register. That stuff isn't there anymore. Those things that I want to pull from. So all of that, I went through a very unfortunate divorce, and I had 3 kids. I ended up with domiciliary custody of all 3. I had a sister who was single, and my mother, who's no longer with us, and so they helped me tremendously through that process. So we're talking about divorce, we're talking about house fire, we're talking about bankruptcy. Went through all of that. Had a legal situation in a business that I was affiliated with that I really wasn't aware was a legal situation, and I got into a spider web with that, and that was very costly in very many ways. And I learned an enormous amount from that. I can't tell you that along the way I didn't suffer from some of the emotions that probably other people will resonate with, and that is the emotion of resentment, or why did this happen to me, or whatever. Those are human thoughts. We go through that. Anybody says they don't go through that's a liar. Okay. But nonetheless, I went through them, but I finally come to that point of realizing I got to go on. Yeah, I've just got to pick back up and go on. The old, I think it's a Chinese proverb, says, "Knock down one time, get up 7." You just keep getting up. So that's what I did. I just never, ever, ever gave up. I never gave up on my vision of trying to do everything I could with this body and life God gave me and make it the best I could possibly do. And that's what I just kept pursuing and kept pursuing. Anyway, with all of that said, I met a wonderful lady. It's been 12 years now, and she brought her kids in. I had mine. They've all met. We've had a wonderful life, and I've been very, very blessed. I started back into practice, and when I started back into practice, I went and enrolled in several different credentialing programs and received a fellowship, primary spine care. When I received it, I was the only one in the state that has gotten it, and one of 8 in the United States that received it. So it was very intense, but I wanted to do that. I wanted to stay ahead of the game. I say all that not because of anything I've done, but because regardless of what you've gone through, and I know there's people that have gone through things worse than maybe what I just said, but those are some pretty devastating events. I just kept going.
Take us back a little bit, because there's so much to unpack there, Dallas. And I know, we have such a kinship because, like you, I had a company, had to take it bankrupt, had a hurricane wipe out everything I owned. So I had absolutely nothing. But I remember the fire in your house. But tell me, so twice now you've learned a profession and then built a bunch of clinics. Then you had a series of setbacks, then said, I'm going to learn this other profession. And now you have 3 different locations again. What is the thing that made that shift for all the entrepreneurs that are watching, that have big dreams? You multiple times now have said, oh, this is interesting. Let me make it bigger so I can serve more people. Not many people build a company to 22 clinics. Just saying. What was the thing that drove you to say, oh, I'm a chiropractor, but I can help a lot more people if I run 22 clinics? Or I'm now an expert in occupational therapy, but I can help more people if I open up a bunch of locations. There's a mindset that goes along with that kind of expansion. What is that for you? What does that look like?
Well, it starts with a drive, originally. I mean, and that's something that if you have it, you know you have it. If you don't understand it. But I just have always had a drive. I've always been very, very driven, and I've refused to quit and to say no. Now I'll change directions, get on a different road. I won't go down the same road that's failing. But I never really wanted to quit. But I do want to say this: when I first started my profession, I was young, I was wet behind the ears. I thought I knew everything, and in retrospect, I knew nothing. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had the drive, but I lacked the wisdom and the experience and what I call the failures, but are actually learning experiences. I didn't have any of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so my drive was to do more, but my purpose probably wasn't what it should be. When we're younger and we have a drive like that, our drive is to do more. If you have that drive, our drive is to do more, and somewhere along the line, money's always the object we're running after. Okay. When I went through everything that I went through and would get up, get knocked down, get up, get knocked down, get up, get knocked down, and that just continued, I changed my purpose. I really, honestly, from my heart, changed it to I really want to find what I'm best at, and I want to help other people with that. I want to serve. So, although money is a yardstick of the service we render, and we certainly all have to have it, living without it is a very difficult thing in this world. That is not my primary focus anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And the ironic thing of that is it's, I don't want to say easier, but it comes more fluently now than it ever did, simply because I don't put that as a focus anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I don't look at how much I make, judging who I am or where I fit in the socioeconomic class of the world. I'm just a person like everybody else, puts their clothes on like everybody else, and I'm no better than anybody else.
Mm-hmm. Well, you also have I want to talk on the value, touch on the value of training a little bit, because being that we've been friends for a very long time, I know a lot of your background. I know you had 2 black belts at a very, very young age, and you don't get a black belt without getting knocked down and getting back up and getting knocked down and getting back up and taking a bunch of hits and getting back up again. Talk to us a little bit about the value of that, of training oneself for success, of training oneself to become something bigger than we are without the training.
Well, you got to have the training. I mean, I don't know of anything we do in life we don't have to put a sacrifice for. And when I was younger, I wasn't that good in athletics in my early teenage years. You know, when I just started turning 13 in that. You always have those few that excel and they can jump over the basketball hoop, do everything. I just wasn't one of those people. And I tried to find my place, and somebody invited me to a YMCA back at that time. I don't know if we have those anymore, but a YMCA, and they had karate classes at that time. And so I enrolled at the age of 13, and I've always been, if I enroll in something, I give it my all, and whatever the end goal is, I don't want to stop until I get to that end goal. So at the age of 16, I've got a first degree black belt in Shotokan karate. That's what it was. And then I started helping at 17 and 18, teaching some at the YMCA, and went to a lot of different tournaments. I placed in some of the tournaments. I never was a national champion, but I did place in some. I certainly had that goal. As a matter of fact, at that time, that was when I remember being at Dallas at the national championships. A guy named Chuck Norris had won right before that. And then there was a guy named Bill Wallace. If anybody knows the the martial art field. They know him. He's still around right now and still actually teaching.
Mm-hmm.
But I ended up meeting him and actually training with him, sparring with him, all that stuff. And then I went to school. And so I buckled down on that. When I went to school, I said, okay, how many years is it going to take me? What will it do? Or how many years will it take me if I just don't stop in the summer? I just keep going. And so I did that. I started the school, and I literally went school 12 months a year.
Mm-hmm.
Just kept going to get done as quick as I could. Got out, started my practice, and then we pick up a little bit where we left off on. But I wanted to get back in the martial arts, and so I think it was my late 20s. I'm trying to remember it now, Rich, but maybe a little off. I met a guy that opened up a gym here, and that's when all the MMA things were starting at that time. And he had a thing called American Karate. A guy named Joe Lewis was the heavyweight karate champion years and years ago. Wasn't a boxer; it was a karate champion.
Mm-hmm.
Trained him, and so I got involved with him, and I got a black belt in that. And then I figured it around the age of 40, I had relatively good joints, and I was in good health. And I thought, you know what, I'm gonna keep it that way because at this point I don't want to mess up anymore. So I still work out and that. I don't really train with that anymore. I do work at a gym, and I do a lot of bag work and glove work and boxing and things like that because some of my friends are boxers. But I do it for physical reasons, and it's a mental training too, Rich. That whole thing you talked about, the training, that whole thing in martial arts trained me to be disciplined.
Mm-hmm.
Just trained me in so many ways that I just wasn't aware of. I didn't understand, and I think it helped me become more driven in life toward other goals of what it is that I wanted to accomplish.
So with that in mind, what would you say? Because I couldn't agree with you more. I myself being a martial artist as well. I I remember the day that I finally said, you got to hang this up, bud, was when I realized that it only takes getting dropped on your head one time for really bad things to happen. And as you get a little older, a little more seasoned, it takes a little bit longer to recover from those things.
That's
But I love
fact,
that.
right? Yeah.
What would you say are the two most important characteristics to cultivate for a successful entrepreneur? If you look back on your history, what would you say have been the two most valuable traits or characteristics that you work to develop that you would recommend others pay attention to?
Well, originally, I probably, if I thought about that more, I may come up with some others, but I'm going to tell you what comes to my mind first of all. The first one was believing in yourself. Yeah. I always believed in who I was. I just believed that I had the ability to be able to get back up and to continue in life. And I didn't let the world tell me that I wasn't. I didn't let those words inside. I mean, there are times that we have our down days, don't get me wrong, but I didn't let them inside. I didn't let them resonate. I didn't let them take seed. So I had to have belief in myself. And then I had to have belief in something much bigger than me and have to have faith. And the truth of the matter is, my mother instilled a faith in me that would literally move a mountain. I mean, she had rock solid faith.
Mm-hmm.
And I was brought up in that environment. I don't want to go off on a tangent here, but I just want to say this. There's a lot of people that define faith as religion, and they're not the same thing. And for me, religion should really be defined more as relationship, because there's just so many man-made ways of looking at that, and I know everybody has their own different belief system. But I had to have the belief in me and the belief in something larger than me that created me, that believed in me.
Mm-hmm.
And I set my feet in that. I planted in that. And to this day, I haven't moved, and I will not move. And I tried to raise my kids to understand that you can't be a fence walker in life. You have to decide which side you're going to be on, not whatever's best for the crowd, not whatever somebody says is best. What do you believe? You got to find a place that you say, this is where I stand. Now, you don't have to be obnoxious about it. And I think that's what's wrong with politics today, is they feel like if you don't agree with them on one side or the other, that you're not their friend and they hate you. That's ridiculous. I mean, we all have different ways of looking at anything, but you got to find that place where you, because if you don't have that belief, Rich, I mean, I don't care what I train you in. If you don't believe in yourself and believe in something stronger than you, how are you going to make the next step? I don't see how it's possible.
So I've been very blessed to know you long enough to know that taking a stand has been what defined your life so ferociously, to the point of writing this book right here. Make it happen.
Actually, we have a updated version of that.
Okay, I got the original. Here's my original.
Yeah, we got the updated version.
And I love this because the subtitle of Make It Happen is strategies for obtaining peak performance in your life. And so I want to talk about that just a little bit. What do you, so for the budding entrepreneur, the newer person, not age-wise, because some entrepreneurs don't start till they're 40, 50, whatever, but for a newer entrepreneur, what are some of those key strategies to get to that peak performance for you?
Well, Rich, I've got the book right in front of me, and rather than just, talking off the wall, I'll just tell you, I kind of wrote this book. Basically, I laid out 14 of them, and I laid it out in a way that it kind of went with the book as far as some acronyms and that. But first thing I talked about was committing to adapting and thriving in your life. And that is a commitment, which is what we're talking about. Putting your feet somewhere and committing, having a vision, being able to see what it is you want, and to be able to figure the ways along your journey to be able to achieve that. To have a passion. Tony Robbins talks a lot about passion, used to early in his career, but we have to have a passion about it. I can tell, Ridge, and I know you can resonate with this. I can tell when I talk to somebody what they are most attuned to doing by the passion in their voice when they start talking about it. Okay. And whatever that passion is that you just feel like, man, that is what I enjoy the most. That's your passion in life. You got to affirm that. You got to never quit. And that old Winston Churchill thing, never quit. But it's true. It doesn't mean that you keep going down a road of failure, though. And that's where that gets really, in my mind, defined differently. Never quit. They just keep on doing the same thing over and over, creating insanity and keep failing. That's not what it means. It means to never quit believing in yourself, to never quit having that vision, to never quit having that passion, to never quit pursuing forward toward whatever that goal may be, but be willing to change the past when you run into forks in the road that basically push you in that direction or open doors in that direction for you. You got to stay focused. You can't take your eyes off the goal. Look, when I made a lot of my mistakes, it's because I lost my focus. I lost my focus. I looked in a different direction. I tried to pursue maybe another smaller dream at the time. I was trying to pursue the bigger dream and took my eyes off the goal, lost the focus, and failed. Okay. So you got to stay with that. Leadership was another thing. Not everybody has all the leadership qualities, but they have to understand leadership is not dictatorship. Leadership is the ability to be able to help lead people by influencing them and building them up and finding what they're best at and helping them to be able to pursue those. In my example, I have to have employees. I've got to figure out where they plug in the best. And sometimes somebody doesn't plug in at all, and you think, well, they're not going to work here, but they work well somewhere else in your organization. And it's not always that they need to go. It's a lot of times they're just in the wrong place. So you've got to figure that out. You got to look on the inside at your potential, like who you are and what it is that you believe, and it goes back to belief that you can actually accomplish. What do you think your potential really is? And I know that's a hard one for a lot of people to be able to say, I think I can achieve, X, Y, Z, but really they don't believe that. But you got to awaken that on the inside. You're going to have obstacles. Face that today if you've never faced it before. I don't care what you're doing, you're going to have an obstacle come your way. The issue or the key to it is how you handle that obstacle and how you work to go around the obstacle or even over the obstacle, sometimes through the obstacle, but you're going to have those. Then originally, I kind of transitioned into living and existing. There's a big difference between what you and I are doing right now and living, or excuse me, and existing. Existing is waking up, breathing, getting coffee, doing the same thing every day, having no passion, having no vision, having no goals in life, having no focus, having no purpose, having no nothing. That's existing. Living is having all of those things along with it. We only have one life, and everybody's beat the phrase over and over that life is short. But the older we get, Rich, I think the more we understand that.
And it goes by fast, man. It just like blazes by.
You're sitting there talking to me about these things, and I'm thinking, my mind just started envisioning you coming down the driveway with your children years and years ago. And I started thinking how many years that was. That was like in the late 1990s.
I know, man.
Okay, so when you start thinking about it, you think, my gosh, man, there went, over 2 decades.
Yeah.
So time does go fast, and the day will come, you will breathe your last breath. And this life will be over.
Yeah.
So we need to make the most of this life that we possibly can. And again, that doesn't mean just how much money you make. What do you do? I mean, you look at the people that have made money that have really served a purpose. Look at Elon Musk today. He brought the electric cars and created a whole new avenue. Now all the car industry is trying to compete with him. You look at somebody like Steve Jobs and what he did with Apple. You look at those things. They made a ton of money, but they had a purpose. I mean, they really did change the world in a lot of ways and are changing the world in a lot of ways. So living and existing was something that I defined in there. Reaching for the stars is our goals. Understanding what destroys the wealth that we may get. I didn't understand that. I even wrote it and really didn't understand that. Okay. But the truth of the matter is we come from different backgrounds, and most people, when they start accumulating things in life, subconsciously sabotage themselves and get rid of all of it. They become spenders. They're not savers. They don't understand. They can't look at a bank account grow without thinking, what can I buy with that? What can I do with that? Where can I go with that? As opposed to, just money, let it grow. Okay. When you can reach that point that doesn't control you, that you control it, then you're getting there. So you have to know how to handle what you get, or you're going to continuously lose it. The fear factor, I thought a lot about that. We all say eliminate fear in our life, and to a certain extent, that's true. However, there are certain fears that are good. I stand on top of a building and I'm fearful to jump off a 12-story building. That's a good fear. I don't need to get rid of that fear. All right. Zig Ziglar talked about false evidence appearing real. And what he was speaking of is when we go to pursue something and we're fearful of what people will say, that people will look at us like, who do you think you are? And all those type of fears are what they're really exemplifying there. And they are a bunch of baloney. They really are. You look at people that are really accomplishing things that you see right now in life, and you may have, when I say you, I'm speaking of all of us, we may have looked at that person and had a little judgmental thought or whatever, like, who do they think they are? And then they accomplish something big and we look and say, wow, man, that was great. And you know what? All the stuff that they heard before that they didn't think about and they kept going through the obstacle, it's all gone. And all the people that were against them are now for them. Okay. It all changes that way. And then we got to learn how to communicate effectively. Communication is the thing I think today we've lost. The society today wants to text everybody, wants to email everybody, but nobody wants to do what you and I are doing right now. And I can't tell you how many times I've solved issues by saying, get on the phone, call the person, and talk to them about this and tell them this, this, and this, and let's work it out. And they work it out. They can't do it by emailing back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've got to start lifting and not leaning on each other, Ridge. We all need to lift each other up. You and I have lifted each other up through the years. We got to lift other people up. They got to lift us up. Sometimes I'm going to lean. I need somebody to lift me. Other times I'm going to lift somebody who needs that because they're leaning at times. But we all have to work together on that. But the fear of worrying about what others say or what others think or whatever, you've got to eliminate that. That doesn't mean don't listen to good advice. There's plenty of things written in stone, let's say, whether it be biblical or otherwise, it says we need to sharpen iron with iron by having good, strong wisdom advice in our life and surrounding ourselves with that in which we can trust and listen to. That's good stuff. But that type of advice isn't tearing you down. It's building you up, but it's also letting you know if you're perhaps stepping on somebody, hurting somebody, doing something wrong along the way, then out of love, you look at, say, look, Rich, man, you're doing a great job, but I don't know if you realize you walked all over that person. And as a friend, you need to know that. I mean, that's friendship. That's what that's about. So those are the strategies that I kind of wrote. And that's what motivated me to do to make it happen.
I appreciate that. So with all that said, imagine for a moment we had a time capsule and you could step in that time capsule and rewind to 20 years ago with the wisdom of Dr. Dallas Humble today. What would you like to say to that Dallas Humble of 20 years ago with what you now know?
You're stupid. Oh my gosh, Rich. Man,
that's a great question, isn't it?
That's a tough question. That's why you're so good at doing what you're doing right now. I think, in the beginning it would be to listen more and talk less. Listen more and talk less. I heard what people said. I didn't listen the way I do today. I really take things to heart. I think about them and I think, is that worth me changing my direction or even changing my mind about certain things? So I really try to listen to what people tell me that I didn't do before, Rich. And you and I had this conversation before, but anyone who says they don't have regrets in life is not telling you the truth. And I know there's a famous song, My Way, that Frank Sinatra and Elvis Presley sang, and says, regrets, I had a few, but then again, too few to mention. Man, I got plenty of them. I don't have a few. I got plenty of them. I can tell you a lot of them. None of us walking on this earth have not run into somebody or had a relationship where we treated them wrong or we said something we shouldn't have said. Or we did something we shouldn't have done, or whatever. We all have regrets if you really think about it. But we don't need to dwell on it. We got to put a period instead of commas in our life. And for me, that was the biggest turning point for me getting over my learning experiences when I failed so hard. One of my falls originally was so hard that I thought a nuclear bomb was going to go off in Northeast Louisiana. I really did, because it just felt like I fell that hard. And I carried that with me a long time. And I had so many regrets. And every time I would start to do something, I would think, man, do you really need to do that? You went through this before. And I just, all these voices in my mind. And I finally come to the place of realizing that life it's a story. And one day we talk about the death of us. One day there's a little epitaph with a dash. and that little dash is your life, and that's kind of how it goes. And it's a sentence. And I just had to learn how to put periods.
Mhm.
not look back and create a box up here of I don't know. I call it an I don't know box. And there's certain things I can't figure out, can't figure out the purpose, can't figure out why they happen. You know, I've had things happen to me. And so Dallas has a purpose, and one day you'll realize what the purpose is. Well, some of them I hadn't realized yet, you know. So I just shoved it over there in the I don't know box and just kept going. And maybe I will, maybe I won't. I don't know, but I don't try to figure it all out. I just put the period, get up, and move forward. And I was teaching a seminar years ago, Ridge, and this was some of the time that you and I had kind of life had taken us in different directions, but it was called Finish Strong. And I taught it to several groups up here in Northeast Louisiana. And I taught it online a couple of times, but it's all about the fact that we're all going to finish. The question is, how are we going to finish in life? And the only thing people remember is the finish.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you think about it, those that have accomplished a lot and then had some massive failure at the end, the only thing they remember is the end. They remember what that person did at the end. Those that had failures all along and then accomplished something great toward the end of their life, the only thing people remember is the finish, that they did something great. We can think about that with, and I don't want to, I hate to just name names, but we can think about it with celebrities that have fallen from grace at the end that we thought were great all along. All we think about is the fall from grace. And it goes the other way. So the finish strong was something that I really pushed on how you finish in life. And we talked about foundational principles behind that finish. But I'm a big believer in the finish. And the finish doesn't mean it has to be your end today. It just means from this point forward, your phase in life until you leave this life, how do you want to be how do you want to finish? How do you want to be known? People have a short-term memory.
Mm-hmm.
They only remember the last part of whatever it is that you did. So I just urge everyone listening to this to, regardless of where you're at, regardless of where you've fallen in life, regardless of what's come at you, set your focus on finishing strong, because that's really what matters.
I tell you, man, so much wisdom. Fall down once, get up. So I've got all kind. I've been scribbling notes as fast as I could write over here. Just so much great stuff. Put a period, not a comma. Listen more, talk less. The I don't know box. All that matters is the finish. So much great stuff. One last question I love to ask, and that is, if you could recommend 3 books or tapes or pieces of content or something that have had a big influence in your life that people should pay attention to, possibly consider consuming, reading, listening to, what would those 3 things be that you'd recommend for others?
Oh my goodness, Riz, narrow it down to 3, really?
Well, man, people are busy. You can't give them too many.
Oh,
Video.
you know, Reg, I've got to think about that. I mean, I really, really do. I think that number one, we need to find whatever it is our faith is, and the purpose of this call isn't try to identify that in everyone, but whatever that faith is, and whatever it stands for, to make that book part of your life and your faith, something that you can stand on and do. For a lot of people, that's the Bible. It is for me. It may be something else for someone else, and I respect everyone's belief. But find that faith and stand on that. The first book that was instrumental to me was Napoleon Hill's book that we all know, and that was The Think and Grow Rich.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was a beginning turning point for me, to understand that as a man thinketh, so is he. As a woman thinketh, so is she. And so I had to train my thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And your thoughts are what control you. And the truth of the matter is, we all, if we don't control them, they're going to control us. They are. And it was hard for me in the hard times, but I just tried to surround myself with those few people that thought like me. I tried to only listen to things that uplifted me and gave me strength and focus. I tried to only put into this computer what I wanted to go out. So the Think and Go Rich was a big thing for me. The third one I'll have to think about, honestly, originally right now. I would just say the third one for me was I made my, it's not one book, but I made my automobile a university.
Mhm.
And I stopped listening to uh, how I was going to dig up bones, and my wife got the car and I didn't, and those things. I love music. I mean, I love concerts. I love all that. I'm not making fun of it, but I made it a university for a number of years. And every time I got in, I listened. I listened to all type. At that time, it was cassette tapes.
Yep.
We listened to all kind of cassette tapes. Some people like, what is that? But we listen to cassette tapes, and then now it's podcasts.
Yep.
There's no reason for anyone not to tap in to the power of inspiration and word now, especially with the internet, the phone, and podcasts and things like you're doing, Rich. I mean, you do it anytime. You can do it. You can do it when you're on break at work. You can do it in the morning. You can do it in the evening. You do it anytime, and just fill your mind full of things that matter. Gosh, if we watch the news every day, we're the most depressed people in the world. The news is not meant to inspire.
Mm-hmm.
There was a singer, I think she's still living, Anne Murray, but she had a song called "A Little Good News." And I would encourage everyone who listens to this to look that song up on YouTube, "A Little Good News Today." And what she spoke about was all this fighting and all these wars and all this stuff going on. I just need a little good news today, and she explained in the song, we all need that good news.
Mm-hmm.
You may need to know what's going on in the world, but I would rather the people that are involved in making those decisions that influence my life and your life, I would rather think that they've got that type of input going in, so that when they enter that room or that position in which they have to make these decisions in adversarial ways, that they've got this inspiration and faith and belief, and they're making good, outstanding decisions that affect all of us in a positive way, as opposed to getting all of their wisdom from that crowd, which is not necessarily the best in the world. So that's the first things that come to my mind.
I appreciate that, brother. So as we're wrapping up here, final words, what would you want to share based on your amazing breadth of experience and all the ups and downs, the valleys, the highs, the lows, the final words you want to share with the budding entrepreneurs that are out there that have a dream, they're going after it? What would you want to tell them?
Well, originally, I just summarized what we said. I'd say, do not take your eyes off your goal, but understand that you have two of these and you got one of these. And be willing to listen more than you speak. Don't think you know it all. You and I have run into that all in our life. I remember when the stock market roared years ago, and it's roared since, but I remember one time it roared years ago, and there was a young guy that I got to know that was investing in the stock market and making all kind of money, and he just thought he had it all figured out. He said, I got it down. I don't know why all these people lose money. I got the system down. He ended up losing everything he had. He didn't want to listen to the fact that it was the time. It wasn't just your knowledge. Okay. So we got to listen more, and then do what I talked about. And that is focus on today, not yesterday, in finishing strong. Don't carry your past forward. You're not indicative of your past. The past doesn't define you. The past doesn't make you. The past has nothing to do with who you are. And if you look at the most successful people throughout history, if you'll look at their past, it's not always complementary to how they finished. So focus on today forward. Every day you have today. That's what you got. Do the best you can do with what you have, and don't stop believing in yourself.
Dr. Dallas Humble, thank you so very much for all of that wisdom. And I think we can take that to heart in a big, big way. Focus on today and finish strong. Wow. My brother, my great friend and mentor, thank you so very much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom and passion with the Groove community. Deeply, deeply appreciate it. And I love you a ton.
Love you too. Big hug your way, Rich. Thank you.
Thank you, brother.